I've also heard the management trainees are treated very specially in these consumer businesses.
I think when you're just fresh out of a B school, every youngster feels that we would want to have a role in marketing, sitting in fancy rooms and boardrooms, etc. Developing creatives with advertising agency, creative advertising. But I think you got to earn your stripes. As you know, they are pretty much sort of thrown in the fire, and thrown in the deep. So a lot of these things are also cultural. If you're sitting with a distributor, let's say in Rajasthan or in UP or Bihar, if we don't have your cup of tea, then it does not help you.
I often see and come across so many people who are in marketing / sales / growth roles who would have never experienced what actually happens on ground, right?
It's like when you put a young batsman, in Australia on bouncy pitches, and you learn by facing the fast ball, and then you start hooking it and pulling it. That's when you become a great batsman, right? It's actually the four C's: competition, channel, consumer, and your own conscience. So when you marry all of this, that's when growth strategy happens.
Welcome to the first episode of the Slow Marketing Podcast, and I'm delighted to have Mr. Subhrangshu Neogi as our first guest on this podcast. Quick background about Subhrangshu. So Subhrangshu is a corporate CXO turned entrepreneur, has spent over 2 decades in the corporate world across CPG, retail, financial services, media, etc. And in 2017, he decided to take the entrepreneurial plunge. And he, after investing in a company called Trustmore back in 2017, he joined the company as an operating partner and co-founder in 2019. Trustmore has pioneered digital escrow in India and currently operates 6 or 7 different brands under its portfolio with a single motive of simplifying financial transaction and money flow for businesses in India. So welcome, Subhrangshu. I'm delighted to have you on this podcast and would love to know about your career, your early career, how it has been till now, and then we'll take it up from there.
Thanks, Neeraj. Pleasure always chatting with you, and thanks for having me on the show. Just a small correction that even though I, was thinking of entrepreneurship way back in 2017 and even earlier, technically I became an entrepreneur in 2019 end, which is when I assumed the hat on operating partner at Trustmore. But thanks for having me over. And coming back to your question in terms of a little bit about my background. So I spent, almost 25 plus years in corporate roles, corporate leadership roles across categories, as you mentioned, before turning an entrepreneur full that in 2019. And first job was with Harvard on campus. So I really, as they say, cut my teeth in sales, marketing, and brands there. Learned the ropes there. I think fascinating experience, and kudos to the organization to really have structured the management training program in a manner on the lines of what other large CPG brands do globally and in India, like leaders of the world, which actually gave you first-hand access in terms of and learning in terms of how sales and marketing is done. So I spent my early years there in largely in sales and in marketing and so on. Then moved to Reebok and started the core team in India and also part of the larger team South Asia. Looking at the flagship product those days of the company, which was footwear. So a lot of these products that you see on the shelves today, which are sub 2000, was fortunate enough to be part of the core team to have conceptualized and brought them to market, right, with the objective of democratizing premium footwear in India. Then moved into telecom early years, so it was fascinating experience with BCCW India, which was a Richard Lee venture. And we had launched India's first private ISP brands, and then ILD, India's first international long distance carrier. And it was a mix of both B2C and B2B, post which I had a stint in media. Then, of course, I had a long stint, as you know, with the Religare group. And starting from the point in time where we were an unlisted entity, then was fortunate enough to be part of the core team that saw the company going public. And then was also, fortunate enough to be part of the core team that seeded various portfolio businesses. So other than core banking, we pretty much at Religare touched every, aspect of financial services. Because I had a smaller stint in higher education as Chief Operating Officer, Chief Commercial Officer for Laureate Education. And then, of course, plunged into entrepreneurship full time. And so been doing this and hustling, as I call it, in the last 5+ years.
Yeah.
So fascinating experience so far.
Great. I've seen very few marketeers, Subhrangshu, who have taken this plunge in their career, but I would want to go back on your Dabur days, right? I mean, Dabur is India's one of the biggest consumer brands, right? And that's where you started your career. So tell us a bit about your early days at Dabur. And I've also heard the management trainees are treated very specially in these consumer businesses. So tell me about your stint and any interesting anecdotes.
No, I think, as they say, you always sort of have a special sort of a place in your heart for the brand and the company that you started with.
Right.
So we were pretty much baptized by fire.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a very hands-on program, as I just said, and we were lucky enough to actually see that learning because I think when you're just fresh out of a B school, every youngster feels that you would want to have a role in marketing, sitting in fancy rooms and boardrooms, etc. Developing creatives with advertising agency, creative advertising. But I think you got to earn your stripes. And I think the usual, and I keep telling youngsters that the typical route that you got to follow is sales and distribution, being on ground close to the customer or the consumer, and then graduating to marketing. And that's what most of us did, right? So I was part of the family products division then. So part of the oral care group, the hair care group.
And where were you based out of?
I was based out of Delhi, and then of course I was in Bihar.
Oh.
So I was managing one of the youngest area sales managers managing North Bihar, based out of Patna, and looking at some very, very tough yet vibrant FMCG markets. Post which I came back to Delhi at a stint in marketing, and then of course we launched Dabur had launched a foods business. So brands like Real Juices, Homemade, etc., which are big iconic brands today. Fortunate enough to be part of the team that actually took these to the market. So I was handling UP as a market. So if you look at from an FMCG context, both Bihar and UP are very, very powerful and vibrant markets,
Right.
and very active markets. So if you were to sort of look at your experience there, you pretty much learn the nuts and bolts there.
Yeah.
And fascinating experience because while you were and by the way, the question or the comment on whether management trainees are treated with kids' gloves, the answer is no. They are pretty much sort of thrown in the fire and thrown in the deep, and you're expected to swim and learn. So a lot of learning that one acquired and some of my other peers acquired, I think was fundamentally on account of the fact that you're swimming in deep waters and you're learning by doing. And I think that's the best form of learning.
So
Right.
during the Dabur days, were you given like one product or a couple of products?
No, so you were part of, so when you were in sales and distribution, you were like managing an entire region or an area with targets. So there was no, shortcuts, and there was no, sort of, as I said, that you're being handled with kids' gloves because you were given a target. Your objective was to actually go out there and deliver on these targets like any other salesperson would. So I started out as like a trainee sales supervisor or the sales officer.
And you would have to visit, say, Kirana stores, all of that.
100%, because your first point of connect is not the consumer, it's the intermediary. So distributors, sitting at distributor stocking points, going out there, doing your daily sort of stock reviews, having your nice chai with them. So a lot of these things are also cultural. If you're sitting with a distributor, let's say in Rajasthan or in UP or Bihar, if we don't have your cup of tea with them, it does not help you. It does not help your case. Put it very
Actually, this is very interesting.
You have to sit, have a chai with them, build the relationship. And it's all about people because you're building relationships.
Yeah. Actually, one of the things that I've observed these days is there are a lot of brands which are started, say, in tier 1 cities, right? And they do cater to a lot of tier 2, tier 3 cities as well, right? But I often see and come across so many people who are in marketing / sales / growth roles who would have never experienced what actually happens on ground, right? So which is very interesting because I've heard that, these large consumer businesses or say like HULs and the P&Gs of the world, before even getting the brand manager or the marketing role, you have to actually be on ground and experience firsthand what is the consumer behavior.
Absolutely, and I think that is very on your stripes, and that is where you actually, learning truly happens. So coming back to the last point where you were asking about visiting retailers, etc. So you actually your 40 calls a day, which means visiting 40 retailers, understanding माल बिकता है कि नहीं बिकता है, क्यों नहीं बिकता है, hear it from them, because they rant, अरे आपका product तो बेचता ही नहीं. So right, you're the first person to actually take the bullet on your chest. Right. And anecdotally speaking, some of these sales officers who are probably twice your age, technically reporting into you, and they realize that there's this Saab coming from, the management trainee cadre or from the corporate office. They actually used to deliberately put you in a tight spot. Let me see how this guy is figuring it out. So that's when you start figuring out stuff. Right. That how do you handle objections? How do you really get insights about whether the brand is good? It's very nice to have created a nice campaign or an advertising campaign, etc. But the proof of the pudding is in optics. So when you're actually there facing the retailer, who's the last mile connect to the end consumer, you get a lot of great insights, which are invaluable.
Yeah.
The other is, if the product is not moving, in spite of the fact that you're spending and investing in brand building, advertising, marketing, you actually get to know the truth.
Yeah.
I also need to face a lot of difficult situations. That's where true learning happens, right? So that is really, both very enriching, but at the same time very challenging, and that's where you truly learn. Because as they say, it's like when you put a young batsman, in Australia on bouncy pitches, and you learn by facing the fast ball, and then you start hooking it and pulling it. That's when you become a great batsman, right? Yeah. So if you look at all young cricketers, who've done well overseas, have always done well for India in the long run.
Yeah.
So if you were to take that as an analogy in the world of sales and marketing, in FMCG or for that matter, any category, durables, right? or for that matter, white goods and any of the other categories, auto.
Right.
Till the time you don't visit the dealer points, till the time you don't visit your on-ground, touch points where the consumer is coming and going, you don't really learn. Of course, the flip side is some of the newer brands are more, digital first. So therefore, they're in touch with the consumer. Okay, so while you're in a more traditional sort of a scenario, in touch with the intermediaries and the supply chain or the value chain, these sort of brands, the newer brands, are touch with the consumer. So ideally, when you talk digital or when you talk omni-channel, it's marrying the consumer insight with the trade insights, coupled with your own strategic insights, that you actually build an ecosystem which works well.
Right.
As I say, it's about the 3 C's. And I was telling somebody in the morning today that when you build a product,
right,
or when you actually create something for the consumer, you got to look at it from the prism of the 3 C's. Your own conscience, which is your own strategy,
right,
which is intuitive and also based on your own learnings and your vision. The third is the second C is the consumer. So which means what the consumer thinks, the consumer insights. And the third is your channel and competition. So it's actually the 4 C's: competition, channel, consumer, and your own conscience. So when you marry all of this, that's when true strategy happens. And one can really not, sort of work in a vacuum. Okay. So you may have a great strategy, but what if that doesn't marry with what the consumer wants? Or what if the channel, whether the channel ultimately has a great influence in terms of how the consumer buys and what the consumer buys.
Right.
So today, if you're a great supermarket or a retailer, who is sort of retailing, let's say 50 brands, okay, he's getting a better margin, or he personally believes and has conviction about a certain brand, he can actually move the needle. Either for you or for your competition. So I think it's very important to take that integrated view, and it's very important for youngsters today, young marketers today, to actually go out there and see what's happening on it. Till the time you don't meet, whether it is B2B or B2C, until the time you don't have the voice of the customer, you can't really be a good marketer.
Well, actually, I think this is a great point. Actually, in fact, in advertising also, I feel nowadays insights are often mined on Google, right? But I think still your true consumer insight will only come to life when you speak to people on ground, right?
100%.
So for example, I have this habit of speaking to, say, Uber drivers or auto rickshaw drivers.
And these are life learnings.
Exactly.
I mean, there is no structured format to it, right? So one of the things that I used to practice, and I know you do it for a fact, we've discussed this in the past, when I used to visit a town, I should talk to the taxi drivers then. There was no Uber tours. Yes, taxi drivers, rickshaw pullers, dukandars, So getting that on-ground feedback, the sentiment on ground, how does a town think? How does a town behave? How does a city behave?
Yeah.
Because every city, and India, the way we are structured as a country, every 200 kilometers, the dialect changes.
Yeah.
Or maybe even less. Maybe even less. Every maybe 50 kilometers, the dialect changes. Right? Culture codes change. Dialect changes. So therefore, consumer insights are very different. So at a overall level, maybe there's not much of a difference. But India cannot be treated as one large ecosystem. So there are multiple Indias within India.
Yeah.
And those real insights are only when you visit on the ground, talk to taxi drivers, what do they do? What do consumers do? What are people telling? That's when true learning happens. And this is pure conversation. Pure conversation.
One of my passion is to follow politics, right?
Yeah.
And particularly for politics, because in the country there's a lot of narrative around how media is controlled in a certain way, etc. Right? But a lot of times when I speak to these cab drivers or auto rickshaw drivers about, say, what is their feeling towards a particular political party, you'll get something which is completely different from the narrative that is going on, right? So again, insights are always helpful, and I think for young marketers, this is something.
No, absolutely. And coming back to the point that you raised about how important is it for agencies, because typically if you look at the entire marketing process or the creative development process, there's a brief, which is a function of your, as I said, the C's, functions, your own conscience, your own vision, customer lens, channel feedback, product development, competition, and so on. That is distilled in the form of a brief, just pushed it down. So it's like, as they say, pushed down to the top.
Yeah.
At a board level, then at an operating CXO level, then down the line, then the brand manager or the last mile, push to the agency, the servicing team, servicing team, planning team, and I'm talking about the traditional chain, right? Then the creative team. I think all that is changing and has to change now. Okay, so even those days, I'm talking about the mid 90s when we started our career, even later, it was mandatory for our partner teams, agency teams, research teams, BTL agencies to actually go on an immersion with the brand client side.
Right.
And a lot of good agencies then had mastered that and used to make it mandatory. So the likes of GWT, KMB, etc. So they used to actually be hand to hand and shoulder to shoulder with the client team.
Right.
Unfortunately or fortunately, I think that trend seems to have sort of, people would have, if I were to use the term, they lost their paths.
Right.
So a lot of insight mining happens through Google, right?
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Of course, it's good because you also have access to a lot of information, which are international best practices, and it's a digital first world. So a lot of things which were probably not available through the internet or other sources are now available.
Yeah. You
can study about global brands, you can study what's happening in other markets, understand about best practices, but locally on ground, the insights are equally important. Yeah. Which is why I'm a great advocate of brands and the learning ecosystem being digital. Even though you're a digital first brand, what we've seen of late is that true traction in a country like India will only come when you're actually trying to replicate the model in a physical world, right? So just physical distribution. So in order to scale, you may be digital first, you may be sort of from a process perspective, be digital, etc. But at the end of the day, to really make the needle move, you also need to build a physical distribution. Yeah, right. So which is where I think a lot of youngsters need to go back to the drawing board and probably respect a little bit of gray hair, take insight, which is why, again, the next point that I was trying to, actually, let's say the advent a lot of traditional CXOs, and no longer CXOs, who probably stepped into a more consulting avatar. Some of these guys coming in as advisors, consultants, board advisors in some of these companies.
Right.
Yeah. Because I think promoters and business owners really value that and they are trying to marry that. And even VCs and VC funded companies also take these kind of people on their board as external advisors.
Right. So Subhrangshu, I think you spent almost a decade at Religare, right? And last
12 years.
11
plus years.
Yeah. And last you were the group CMO at Religare, and you have handled multiple businesses within Religare.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you've been a part of or you've led is the entire IPO that happened at Religare, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about that process, and from a marketing standpoint, what all things did you guys do for the IPO?
Sure. No, I think very good point, and I think I still remember vividly. This was when you were unlisted, and this was one of my earlier sort of phases during my role at Religare. the mandate was very clear. But, we were going to go for that. The amount that we were raising, or capital that we were raising, from a quantum perspective, was not much. Because we were blessed with capital, part of the larger group, as you know, larger promoter group. So the purpose of the IPO was not so much capital. It was more validation, external validation by the market. The size of the IPO was not very big. The issue got really oversubscribed. And if I were to, my memory serves me right, I think it was a record 165 times. Right. It was a phenomenal IPO.
Yeah.
And we used the IPO as an opportunity to also build the brand. So it was a proxy to the brand building exercise. Those were our early days. And we were seeding various businesses. We had a couple of legacy businesses, but on the back of the brand building that we were doing during the IPO, pre-IPO, idea was to seed, launch various businesses and establish the model that, was our vision. That we would want to be seen as an integrated financial services partner. And those were the early days. So I still remember, we vividly remember it was almost like a scene out of the Chavde movie. Sitting in a meeting room, like almost probably as big as this, with about 12 people, which was a core team, the marketing team, and youngsters, a couple of experienced people. And it was like, giving a pep talk to the team as Travel put it. This is the opportunity, this is the time. Moment of reckoning is here. We will create history. This IPO goes well. This was T minus 4 months. So it's different IPO. So the entire planning process, the advertising agency, communication, building the core anchor thought, brand narrative, and so on and so forth, and then executing. So it was all about the grunt work, execution. And usually, if you've seen an IPO, most people do roadshows along with PR agencies in the top 6-7 cities, from where the shares are subscribed. Typical the subscription comes from these top 6-7 cities. But we said, no, let's take a counter view. We would go to 100 cities. We actually made a war plan in a war room like this, that we go to 100 cities. We treat these not just as pure IPO roadshows, but almost like a BTL brand outreach program to stakeholders in all those cities. There were investors who were obviously our consumers. There were distributors who were obviously our channel partners. There were individual influencers in all these cities. So even though shares were subscribed, but in the process, as I said, it was proxy to building the brand. So we actually built distribution on back of that. So in about 100 cities. So the brand, which was known primarily in 20, 30, 40 cities, suddenly overnight was present in 200 plus cities. Of course, parallel to that, we built our own physical distribution, offices, etc. And we create what we called, I still remember, a circle in strategy. So we actually were in the smaller towns, smaller cities, and then we started building the brand in metros and larger cities. Because larger cities like Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, etc., Ahmedabad, were already crowded with legacy players. So we actually created that whole circle in strategy. Okay? So building the brand in all these smaller cities, tier 2, tier 3 towns, building a cult of investments, building a cult of equity broking, and so on. So
Probably then gradually, I would assume a lot of first-time investors also started this journey with Religare.
Absolutely. So as I said, the legacy business of Religare at that point in time was equity broking. But on the back of that, we built physical distribution. On the back of that, we also built other products. So we had insurance, crypto insurance ventures, life insurance in joint venture with global leader Aegon. Then mutual fund business, health insurance, then private wealth. And private wealth was another business that I was personally very closely involved in the genesis of the JV. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the 4 or 5 people who actually went and camped with our JV's partner office in Sydney, which was Macquarie. And they stood for advisory. We stood for distribution. So when we married the two strengths, we actually created something very unique for HNIs and UHNIs. It was India's first wealth management joint venture. Right? Because we strongly and believe that most wealth managers are fundamentally product pushers under the garb of an advisor. So the whole idea was to introduce the concept of advisor. So coming back, I think yes, pre-IPO was very exciting. We really worked hard. It was almost like a war room situation. We worked like a project and demonstrated its success. The IPO was very successful, oversubscribed almost 170 times. And the rest, as they say, history. And of course, one thing led to the other, and every 6 months, we got some new level inside.
So, Subhrangshu, before this podcast, we were also chatting about IPL campaign, right?
Right.
And how during Religare, you really treated IPL not as a vehicle just to, get your brand out there, which is typically what even brands you say doing today. Right?
Correct.
I mean, IPL is an opportunity where you just grab eyeballs, so make sure your brand is out there. But Can you tell us a bit about, what's the route that you went?
So I think the decision to go for an IPL very early in our career, in our journey as a company then was a very, bold and brave decision, as I see it. And and we took that decision and we went down that path. But the objective was very simple. It was not really seen as a brute. And by the way, we were probably one of the best negotiated deals in America at much time. I can't get into figures, but yeah, maybe someday if one chronicles this in the form of a book, I'll probably talk about it. Right now, story. But fact of the matter is that we did not see this as a brute branding exercise. Because see, most people think logo recognition, branding, or advertising is the end all and be all of building a brand. Well, I think building a brand is a lot more than this. Okay? It's about the sum total of all the experiences for all stakeholders, existing clients, prospects, channel partners, employees, and so on and so forth, which all adds up into building the brand. So while we were doing this whole IPO deal, of course, a brand feature among the we partnered with Religare, it was IPO at large. So our logo was very visible, but we did a lot of on-ground activation, on-ground events. We also got an opportunity to entertain a lot of our clients. And those days, I feel even like today, on-ground, more than television viewership, is carnival on-ground. So we were part of that carnival thanks to a brand like Religare. Obviously, a brand affinity, linked up. So you were able to engage effectively with your current stakeholders, future stakeholders, and so on and so forth. So it was a complete 360 exercise. And we leveraged it well. And obviously, when we saw the brand scores later and the CSAT scores later, in terms of what our customers and our stakeholders expect about us, clearly they loved it. So, as an experience, phenomenal. And I think the learning was that whenever you do something, do at an integrated level, as opposed to just seeing it as a logo recognition or a clear brand recall memory.
So, Subhrangshu, I think let's shift the gears a bit. And one of my takeaways is that in marketing, you've always tried to take a new route, something which was not done in the past, right? Across various campaign-based initiatives you've done. And I think you've done the same with your career as well, right? When in 2017, you started investing with Trustmore, and then 2019, you joined them full time.
It was actually slightly earlier because there were other investments, etc.
Right.
So I was always very clear that at some point in time, entrepreneurship is something that I want to get into. So my journey with entrepreneurship actually started around 14, 15. And at some point in time, I knew I had to make that switch.
Well,
So,
got it. So I just want to sort of dig deeper into that. Why entrepreneurship? How did you get this leader?
As I said, I always wanted to, I was always fortunate. And I think from day zero of my career, and I believe that I've always led my life in a certain way. Ever since my student days. And when I was in school and in college, always wanted to create stuff. And I was very good and still am, I like to creating, building stuff, right? So that entrepreneurial bug, knowingly, unknowingly, was there. Subconscious or even otherwise. Like, for instance, way back in BU, still I'm studying at the college. I fought a college election. We had a college parliament at Hindu. So I won an election and became the literary secretary because of the activities that I was involved in, debating, theatre, and other activities and so on. I won a college election. And then, of course, some of us started this initiative those days a magazine for new joiners. So it was like a product when you do search and discovery, right? And freshers come on campus and so on and so forth. So we actually started that. We built the concept. We created a handbook, distributed. So that it's almost like a startup venture that we ran. Of course, it was not monetized and so on. It was more done by the purpose and the passion of it. But I always had that. I loved building stuff. And when I started working as well, I always thought, it must be fascinating to do stuff for yourself and building it. First, early days, you didn't know about it. But then over a period of time, and especially at Religare, where I think we were fortunate, some of the core team members were there from very long period of time, that we were actually empowered by the board, we were empowered by the top management, the group CEO and the chairman, etc., that we were almost like entrepreneurs doing our own things, entrepreneurs. So I think every 6 months we were doing something new, building something new. So when you were in that mode for more than a decade, and it almost became part of your second nature. And clearly, the next opportunity that you got by default or by design, you wanted to start something of you. I feel that I'm blessed that, something happened. And as they say, my partner Ashwin, and we were chatting, and I made a small investment in our personal capacity as in the board. You know, somewhere I think the chemistry happened, and somewhere I think what we were seeking to build, vision perspective, it matched.
Got it.
We really started this journey. So yeah, I mean, as they say, the rest is history, and it's been a fascinating journey so far. The journey continues.
So, Subhrangshu, I think at Trustmore, which is like pioneered digital escrow in India and has multiple different products now, we also take care of the marketing function, right? So, I want to ask this question. You have been like a marketeer, last you were group CMO of various companies, and now you are also leading marketing, but this time as a co-founder and operating partner of the company, right? How do you see marketing differently wearing in both of these roles?
First of all, very good question. First of all, when you're an entrepreneur, you don't lead any function. You lead all functions.
Yeah,
Whether it is
true.
fixing the front office or fixing the door or the doorknob or the cabling or the wiring or the plumbing or specific
Ask me
functions.
about it.
Correct. So I'm sure you resonate with that.
Yeah.
So I think you got to do all of that. But yes, you're right. Functionally, I think when we have to market ourselves as a business, so initially we were a zero cap business, and we were very proud of the fact that we were the first company to conceptualize a unique concept and then commercialize it.
Right.
And we had all the tailwinds. It's good and bad both. Good why because you have the tailwind, bad because you have to go and justify. But I think both me and my co-founder Rashun, we were very blessed to have a very strong network. So business used to come organically. But the last couple of years, as the space is getting more democratized, more players coming in, so the bigger boys also coming in, which is by the way validation for us. I think what we realize is that building a brand tool, building the brand, and doing specific things around marketing, brand building, consumer outreach is very important. So we started doing that. And of course, the difference is that when you actually build a brand for a corporate, you're being supported and sponsored by the top management of the board. So it's somebody else's money, right? But when you're actually doing it as an entrepreneur, it's your money. And of course, it is the investor's money. So the accountability obviously is very, very high. Okay? And you got to be frugal because ultimately you only have finite capital. Unless you've raised some obnoxious amount of capital, which by the way, we've been very conscious to raise the capital that we raised, and we would want to spend and invest that judiciously. And the idea is to do it for all the right things and not do marketing for the sake of doing marketing. Because if I were to sort of, without being very controversial about this, that a lot of marketers do stuff because they have created bench.
Yeah.
And they also want to do that because they want to earn stripes on their CV. But as an entrepreneur, you don't want to earn stripes on your CV because your CV is a carrot. Your CV is only as good as the business that you run and the work that you do and how you're able to scale down. That's right. So therefore, you become a little bit more realistic and dispassionate about the whole things. Whereas when you're in a CMO role or when you're in an organization, there are these other governing factors. So even if you don't need a campaign, at times people sort of go ahead and do a campaign. So that makes you a little colored in terms of your vision. So you're getting the nuance that I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference. Okay, and that makes a world of difference in terms of the strategies that you adopt, the operating model that you adopt, the engagement model that you have with partners, and what is it that you say ultimately in the external ecosystem.
So, Subhrangshu, you've been a strong proponent of doing marketing mindfully, and you also touched upon how it's very important to be frugal in marketing, right? So, tell us a bit more about that. I mean, why do you feel so strongly about doing marketing in this way, which is more aimed towards building a brand, not just for today or tomorrow, but say for the next decade, right? Which we are calling, the concept of slow marketing, where you don't do marketing just to get immediate results without having a view of the future, So tell us a bit more about it and why you feel so strongly about it.
So I think the whole campaign mindset is dead, right? So it's not about one campaign. It's not about some leads. So all that is very important. Everything is important. I think what is important, what we should be losing sight of, is the whole concept of building the brand. And brand, as I said a while back, is not just about a campaign. It's not about an advertising campaign. It's not about a creative. It's not about few ads here and there. And it's also not about performance marketing. It's a sum total of everything that you do. And it's also not just about the consumer or what you see externally. It's also about how you amplify that internally, because ultimately your people are the last country of consumer. Also, what are your channel partners? So all these sum total, or what you create, what you build in your journey in the brand is what brand is. Then it's not a big house. Then I strongly believe that it's a journey, and either giant leaps or incremental steps, or these baby steps that you take every day, every minute, is what brand is all about. And now it comes to life after some very, very persistent and hard work that you put in place.
So, Vash, you're talking about persistence, right?
Yeah.
If to be in a certain role and a certain business for a very long period of time, right? But what we've also been seeing that marketers today are sort of
Hopstage on.
every 2 years, right?
Correct.
Why is that happening, right? And why are we seeing?
I mean, I don't know why that is happening, but I think somewhere it's also, it could be that, people are not very patient. Okay. Average age of the CMO is gone down to, I think, it's a year, 2 years. Right? The average tenure in a certain role. But the fact of the matter is that if you're not able to either move the needle or create impact, either you yourselves are, looking for an option, or there are other options being exercised by the management. Because I told you, the CMO or the head of marketing or the person who's a brand custodian has to make an impact. Either you're doing things or you do things differently, or every 6 months, 1 year, you're embarking on a new journey. So people who are able to successfully do that, obviously, they're in there. And most importantly, the board or the management should see the relevance of that. And so even as a function, you got to be relevant.
You can't just be like a cost
It
center.
can't be a cost center. You have to show impact. Now, these could be quantitative impact, impact or qualitative impact. But somewhere impact has to be visible.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is very important.
So, Subhrangshu, I've also seen that AI is getting too popular in marketing, right? Amongst marketers. And I'm a part of a lot of groups. Right? And every second we are having conversation on how can you use this tool, how can you use that tool. And somewhere one of my point of view is that, in pursuit of doing things fast again, marketers are adopting these AI tools without really giving it a thought that first they need to figure out what to say, right? Which an AI cannot do. That is what I feel, right? So what's your point of view on AI and, especially AI in regards to marketing?
See, point of view is very simple. Is that technology is a great level away. It's a big enabler. Any function, whether it's marketing, sales, finance, etc., you can't live without technology. So it has to be treated like an enabler. It cannot be the end all and be all of marketing or the function or the purpose for which you exist, right? So if you were to ask me, basics of marketing, consumer outreach, and brand building have not changed. So as I told you, at Religare and even before that, we always used to do content marketing. I still remember we demystified finance through a web asset that we created, through offline books that we created. Not us in Religare, but other banks for ages, and we used to do it even earlier. So content marketing was a reality then, it's a reality today. That you have to engage with the
channel has changed.
It's just the medium has changed, right? So digital has become more, important, and therefore it's been proud, and therefore suddenly this who are on content marketing, as I know it, and not sort of rushing any feathers in. But fact of the matter is always like this. The form factor has changed. Likewise, brand building always was there. Social media today is on digital, but you actually used to do a lot of client engagement activities and consumer outreach, etc., in an offline sort of a mode. As you rightly said, you went and used to talk to channel, get insight, talk to consumers, sit outside a kirana shop at 6 o'clock when people used to come in smaller towns and do their daily day-to-day needs, shopping, etc. That's consumer insights, which is what I'm doing. Engage the sentiment. So all those things are always there. People today are leveraging technology to do things more efficiently, do them better, and be in sync with the in tune with the times. The times are changing. Technology is a leveler. So to answer your question, is this important? Of course it is important. Does this help? Of course it helps. But you need to understand that don't just do things, whether it's technology or any other thing, for the heck of doing it. Because I think a lot of people today, especially youngsters, I've got boys, one of the boys, they're men now, right? And when I talk to them and I tell them, listen, why are you doing what you're doing? What's the why of what you're doing right now? Actually, they don't have answers. They're doing it because their friends are doing it. They're doing it because the world is doing it. So I think that answering the why is very important. And I think you got to ask yourself that question before embarking on that journey.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of youngsters doing that. But at the same time, I've also seen a lot of youngsters not doing that. Because the world is doing, I'm doing that. You know? And so then, I don't know if I've answered your question.
No,
But I think that is the whole thing. And while you have to deploy something for your organization or do something for your own, first ask the question why. Is it important for me? Why am I doing this? How will it help me? And then embark on that journey.
Right.
Because everybody's journey is different. Every organization is different.
Specifically about AI, so one of the recent updates that Google has come out in April or May is that they are now penalizing AI generated content.
Right.
And there are sort of more nuances to this, but largely if marketeers are only relying on AI to generate content, just put it up, and if they're expecting impact out of it, that's not going to
It's not going.
And Google, I mean, one of the biggest consumer internet companies, they have come out with this massive update, and we've seen so many of brands, their website traffic has actually gone down in the last 3 months.
Right.
Now coming back to Subhrangshu Trustmore, right? It's been almost 5 years since you've been.
Yeah. So we've been in business for about 9 years. And operationally, I've been around for about almost 5 years now. So
I mean, you guys are doing a lot of stuff on at Trustmore, right? And I keep seeing updates every now and then. So tell us a bit about Trustmore. What are the new exciting things that you guys are doing?
No, I think, Neeraj, as you know, and we've been speaking about this, we are fundamentally a digital solutions company. We happen to be in the fintech space, financial services space, right? So our genesis started with EscrowPay, which was India's first digital escrow solution in partnership with banks. And we're very proud and yet, say that with all humility, that we were the first company to conceptualize and commercialize this as a concept. And of course, other people have joined in, the category is growing. So we actually had the good fortune and you're blessed to actually start into the category. But on the back of that, we also started other products and other solutions which are broadly in the ecosystem of transactions per se. And our target audiences are CFOs, business owners, CXOs, and so on, who may want to use either EscrowPay or any of the other solutions or products that we have for simplifying their money flows. And as we've explained and mentioned earlier, we are dedicated to actually create an ecosystem per se of trust, transparency, and simplification of transactions. Because a lot of companies today spend inordinate amount of time, effort, resources to actually manage day-to-day transactions. There's a lot of grind work. There's a need to do.
Right.
That heavy lifting should be left for specialists and operators like us.
Yeah.
While they should focus on their core business of building their business, anxiety and worry-free. So that's the kind of narrative and that's the kind of value proposition that we offer to our customers. We are fortunate that we are trusted by 50,000 plus customers, which is a mix of large listed entities, unicorns, unicorns, digital-first businesses, and MNCs that are partners, right? And of course, it's been a good journey. We've earned some good awards and recognitions during our journey. So our business basically has 3 parts now. So it's an India onshore business where we target this community of CFOs, CXOs, business owners, decision makers. There is a leg in GIFT City, where we are regulated by the ICSC, in sandbox environment, where we are basically launching very soon or commercializing a cross-border play, like a store-led cross-border play and a bunch of other things that we would want to do out of the city. So that's a big opportunity area from financial services perspective and otherwise. Third is onshore business in overseas geographies, such as Dubai to start with, UAE, etc. We are trying to scale and replicate the model that we built in India to other geographies. The pain is very similar.
Right.
That's what we've seen. So that's about it. It's not a very complicated business, and I think
But not what I really like about you guys is this single-minded proposition as it's starting advertising, right? Which is to make your customers anxiety and worry free. Right? I mean, there's a single sort of proposition that
that's our purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
That's our purpose, and I think a lot of that purpose is also driven by how we feel and what we've seen through customer insights and consumer insights. Having talked and dealt with a lot of these guys, right? So either some of these are, because we've been in similar roles, right? I've been in similar roles and I think I truly empathize with what's happening. I know a lot of this is also driven by something, what we call our culture code or a value framework, which is more internal facing than external facing. But all employees, all staff, all colleagues, and all our team members live by the philosophy of diet. This is our daily diet, as I call it. is DIEP, which is diligence, innovation, empathy, and teamwork. So we are eligible to try and be diligent about what we are doing. We try and be innovative. It's again, as you know, innovation is more about doing different things, but trying to do things differently with the objective of delivering value to the end customer or consumer. Third is about empathy. You actually step into the shoes of the customer and understand the pain without trying to sell a dumbbell solution.
Right.
So we are, while we are a product, we are a digital solution, but it's more a managed services more. So we actually support what we do in terms of a solution with, sort of a immersive play with our consumers and customize with agility. The last is about collaboration and teamwork.
Right.
You can't win the battle without teamwork, whether it is internal or external.
Absolutely, Subhrangshu. And Subhrangshu, finally, I would want to ask you, what are the 3 pieces of advice or mantras that you would have for, say, marketeers, the modern marketeers operating in this digital first world, right? That they should embrace?
So I think, whether it's marketers or any youngster or anybody who's trying to make a difference, I think fundamentally show a very strong learning orientation. We should be curious. A lot of people unfortunately feel that they know it all.
Right.
Because you need shape that. You add a certain background, you learn about certain things, you try and replicate things accordingly. If you take each day as it comes and try and embrace your things, be ever curious. I think that's what helps. Right? Because that quest for learning should never end. Okay. And what I also keep telling is that that's been my personal philosophy. I call it the epic philosophy. And it's something that is healthy. So, energy, passion, integrity, and collaboration. So you want to do something with full energy. So when you're working, when you're doing something along with your ecosystem, it's a fully energetic ecosystem, because then the whole world conspires, as they say, bring to life something that you want to see in life. Second one, passion. There are no hard measures.
Yeah.
So I think that's very important. So intent. As they say, defines the word. That's cliche. I think passion is very important. What is the kind of energy, passion that you bring to the table, right? Doing what you're doing, day in, day out. It's like a daily ground work. Third is not integrity. Always personal relationships or very relationships. I strongly believe that integrity is very important. Something can't be delivered, don't overpromise to the customer. Something can be done, don't be forced out. Last is about collaboration. Because I read correctly saying, whether it is collaborating with your own team members, whether it's collaborating with legacy institutions as we have as a fintech today, deliver value to the consumer. I think it's about co-creation and collaboration. So I think fundamentally that's the mantra that I've always sort of believed in.
Yeah.
And I practice this every day, or try and practice it every day. So I think that's about it.
Great. Thank you so much, Subhrangshu.
I'd say that
being part of the show. Yeah, and I think we have some great stuff that I think marketeers, growth leaders, entrepreneurs can take some help from. So thank you so much.
I just hope so.
Yeah.
I just hope so. All right. Thank you.